obscure city is a place where you can find many unique dangers. This is where she works, Cassandra Killjoy, paranormal private eye. Now a teenage girl's father has gone missing, and Killjoy believes that the city's enigmatic protector, the swordsman, is the key to finding him. So Killjoy must face many deadly dangers in her search for the swordsman. Available on Amazon.com. In the 60s, in the middle of the space race and the rise of sci-fi, came a franchise that changed comics and pop culture forever. But for some unknown cosmic reason, it is yet to receive the respect that it deserves. Greetings, true believers. I'm Erod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and welcome to a look back at the Fantastic Four movies, a franchise that has had some amazing adaptations in animation. But for some reason, the first family of comics can't seem to get any traction on the silver screen. Now, as I am recording this, we're just a few months away from Marvel Studios releasing their own Fantastic Four movie, which might just change that. But for now, the franchise's track record in the cinema is questionable at best. But before we dive into the Four Cinematic Odyssey, let's go back to the beginning.
Secret Origins.
Once upon a time, Marvel was not the mega brand that it is today. Hell, they weren't even a distant second to DC. They were just another publisher. But all of that changed with one comic, Fantastic Four. The year was 1961, and DC had officially kicked off the Silver Age of comics by rebooting three of their titles: The Flash, Green Lantern, and the Justice Society of America, which they had rebranded as the Justice League, a title that would go on to be one of the top sellers of the early 60s. For this reason, Martin Goodman, the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, ordered Stan Lee to write a similar comic, one that would simply feature a group of their most popular characters in the same book. But Stan Lee was actually going through an existential crisis at the time, as he had been working for Marvel Comics for over 30 years at this point, and in his opinion, he hadn't achieved anything, so he was honestly considering quitting comics. It was his wife Joan that suggested for him to write the comic his own way. What was the worst thing they could do to him? Fire him? So Stan did just that. He got together with the king of comics, Jack Kirby, they put their magnificent brains together, and they created the Fantastic Four. You see, at the time, superheroes were bland, predictable good guys, interchangeable characters that could only be told apart by their costumes and powers. What Stan and Jack did was give the members of their superhero team distinct voices and personalities. They allowed them to disagree with one another and argue, and they gave them real-life problems. In other words, they took these godlike beings and humanized them. They made the characters relatable. So suddenly, it wasn't just kids reading comics, it was high school students and college students and even grown-ups. With one single comic, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did something that DC couldn't do for over 2 decades. They expanded the comic book reading audience. Fantastic Four was Marvel's first monster hit. It ushered Marvel into the Silver Age of comics, led to the creation of the Hulk and Spider-Man, which then led into the Marvel Renaissance, which then led to Marvel becoming one of the top comic book publishers in the world. And by the 80s, they even surpassed DC. So yes, Fantastic Four is a huge deal, which makes it all the more perplexing why it is not seen as a huge deal by mainstream media. Some fans believe that this is due to the poor public perception created by the movies. So let's start looking at them, starting with the one we were never supposed to see.
Roger Corman's Fantastic Four.
Now, the story of this movie is thoroughly covered in a documentary called Doomed, which is available to watch for free right now on Tubi. So I'll give you the abridged version. In the early 90s, producer Avi Arad and Constantine Film were trying to work out a multi-million-dollar deal with 20th Century Fox in order to produce a series of Fantastic Four movies. The problem was that the Fantastic Four film rights were about to expire, so Constantine Film needed to produce a Fantastic Four movie as quickly as possible so they could retain the rights long enough to finish the deal with Fox. So they hired the king of schlock, Roger Corman, to make a Fantastic Four movie as quickly and as cheaply as possible. But here's the twist. They never actually intended to release the movie. And the sad part is, the cast and crew had no idea. They legitimately believed that they were working on a blockbuster movie that was going to hit theaters during the 1994 holiday season. The result is a movie with a lot of heart, but little to no production quality, as it was produced with a budget of $1 million. For those of you who don't know, that is not enough to make a movie, especially not one based on a big sci-fi franchise. Hell, $1 million is what Jurassic Park spent on snacks. But thanks to some crafty fans, copies of the movie actually made it to the general public. And nowadays, you can watch the whole thing right here on YouTube. So at least all the hard work that went into this movie is not completely wasted. The sad thing is that this underhanded stunt worked. Constantine Film retained the rights, Avi Arad brokered the deal with Fox, and now the Fantastic Four film franchise had a new home. And thus we move into the Fox era of the Fantastic Four, starting with
Tim Story's Fantastic Four.
So we finally got a taste of what a big budget Fantastic Four movie would be like, and it was okay. Now please don't get me wrong, this movie's technically not bad, and Tim Story did manage to capture some legitimate Fantastic Four moments. But the problem was that this version of the movie had been trapped in production hell for so long that by the time they made it and it came out, the comic book movie genre had changed significantly. Far more sophisticated comic book movies were dominating the box office, like Bryan Singer's X-Men, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and New Line Cinema's Blade. Had Tim Story's Fantastic Four come out a decade earlier, I am confident that it would have performed better. But it didn't. So while it didn't bomb, it did underperform. But it did make some decent money through merchandising and licensing deals, which meant there was potential for a sequel.
Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer.
The follow-up represents a mass improvement to the franchise, and the chase sequence between Human Torch and the Silver Surfer is still considered to be one of the best in the comic book movie genre. Unfortunately, this movie bit off more than it could chew, as they tried to cram two major comic book storylines into one movie, one of which was the Galactus trilogy, which set some really high expectations, as Galactus is both literally and figuratively one of the biggest antagonists in all of comics. And suffice it to say, when Galactus finally appears at the end of the movie, those expectations were not met. And to this very day, fans still complain about Cloud Lactus. Now, for those of you who don't know, for a sequel to be considered a success, it has to make more money than the previous movie. And Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer did not. So Fox finally decided to take the film franchise back to the drawing board.
Josh Trank's Fantastic Four, also known as Fant Four Stick. Seriously, who the hell came up with this logo?
By 2015, comic book movies had evolved again. Movies like Sin City and V for Vendetta were critically acclaimed, and even Marvel Studios was starting to produce movies with a bit more edge. So, in their infinite wisdom, Fox decided to produce a darker, more grounded Fantastic Four. Based on Ultimate Fantastic Four, which provides a more modern take on the franchise, this new movie was to be helmed by Josh Trank, the director of Chronicle, which is a pretty solid deconstruction of the superhero genre. Now, Josh Trank is a very talented director, and I am sure that under the right circumstances, he could have made a good movie. Unfortunately, this production was riddled with problems almost from the beginning, and eventually, he was removed and the movie was finished without him, which led to some hilarious inconsistencies and a movie with just no personality. While the previous Fantastic Four movies may not be great, at least they have charm, and it's apparent that the creators love the franchise. There is no love here. This movie is sad, drab, and depressing. To this day, it remains the only Fantastic Four movie that I busted. Hell, I busted it twice, and both Marvel Studios and Marvel Comics disowned it. Marvel Studios ordered Fox to stop putting the Marvel logo in front of their movies to avoid any future brand confusion. This, by the way, is when they created the hyper-elaborate Marvel Studios logo that features all of their characters in between the letters. All the while Marvel Comics stopped producing Fantastic Four comics and merchandise to purposely avoid advertising the film. Yes, it was that serious. 4 years later, Fox would go bankrupt and be purchased by Disney, who also owns Marvel Studios. Ever since, we've been waiting on pins and needles to see what Marvel Studios was going to do with the franchise. And we finally got our answer. So far, all promotional materials seem to indicate that they are headed in the right direction. But only time will tell as to whether or not they will finally break the Fantastic Four's cinematic curse. Personally, I just want these characters and their stories to receive the respect they so richly deserve, because there is so much that we wouldn't have without the Fantastic Four. So here's to hoping. Until next time, I'm Erod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster.